Good evening. Can everybody hear me? Cool. My name is Equin Smith, and I am the acting president of the Nu Zeta chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and I will be serving as your MC tonight. I want to thank all students, faculty, and staff for joining us for this keynote tonight. Tonight, we embark on a journey to better understanding and bringing awareness to the inequalities and their accompanying challenges that are associated with the communication between members and our communities and the broader world. Your presence here tonight fits in with the Western Carolina University's strategic plan, specifically Goal 3, Inclusive Excellence, and especially Initiative 311, building a more diverse and inclusive student, faculty, and staff community to provide an environment in which all can be successful academically and professionally. Please give yourself a round of applause. Before I yield the mic over to Dr. Cairo, I would like to invite the Inspirational Gospel Choir to the stage to perform a musical selection.
I will sing and be crazy for my King. Nothing, Lord, is hindering this passion in my soul. And I'll be grown, even more undignified than this. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'll become,
and I'll be grown, even more undignified than this.
I will dance,
I will sing and be crazy for my King. Nothing, Lord, is hindering this passion in my soul. And I'll become even more undignified than this. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'll become,
and I'll become even more undignified than this.
Na na na,
na 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 na. Na 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 na, and I'll become even more undignified than this. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'll become,
and I'll become even more undignified than this. I come to clap my hands. I come to give him glory. I come to lift my voice. I come to give him glory. I come to make some noise. I come to give it up, and I'll become even more undignified than this. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'll become,
and I'll become even more undignified than this.
shall not be moved.
We shall not be moved like a tree planted by the water. We shall not be moved. Fighting for our freedom, we shall not be moved. Fighting for our freedom, we shall not be moved like a tree planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved like a tree planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
Let's give them another hand for that beautiful performance. Dr. Aminata Cairo is a lecturer for inclusive education at the Hague University of Applied Sciences. Born and raised in the Netherlands to a Sudanese parents, she left for the U.S. to pursue her college education. She obtained master's degrees in clinical psychology and medical anthropology and a PhD in medical anthropology. As an international woman of color, she experienced firsthand the challenges of diversity and inclusion. In her applied anthropological work with students and community organizations, she has continually striven to promote inclusion at both academic and the community level. She received the Martin Luther King Jr. Humanitarian Award at Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville in 2013 for her efforts. In 2016, she received the Honorary Order of the Palm at State Decoration by the government of Suriname for her contribution to culture. Please give a great catamount welcome to Dr. Aminata Cairo.
Thank you. It's so nice to get such a nice introduction. You haven't even done anything yet, and people are already clapping for you. So let me prove my worth. And first of all, thank you all for coming, and also want to extend my gratitude to Dr. Patterson and the Intercultural Affairs staff for hosting me and bringing me here. I am a mother, I am a daughter, I am a sister, I'm a dancer, I'm a psychologist, I'm an anthropologist, I'm a professor in inclusive education, and I am a Lyman T. Johnson Scholar. I'm also from Suriname originally, and in Suriname when we get together, and it is important, like I would think today is, we always start with a song. So ladies and gentlemen, guess what? They have just sung for you, but we're gonna sing together, so let's go. So I'm going to sing Vikong, and you answer with Ja. Okay, simple? So I go Vikong, Vikong. Good, and then we all sing Vikong, Ja. Yes? All right, let's do it. Vikong, no, okay. All right, sing. Yes, make noise. It's not about the right tone or anything, but right? Let's raise the roof. Okay, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Here we go. We kong. Yes. Family, we kong. Everybody. We kong. Ja. We kong. Brother Sisa, we kong. Everybody. We kong. Ja. Give yourself a hand. Yes. All right. So, we kong means we come together. And ja means right here, right now. All right? So I have another one for you. Krikra. Krikra. Good. In Suriname, we say krikra, that means a story is about to begin. So I'm going to start. Oh, let me see if I can get this to work. Ugh. Yes. I'm going to start with a story, and this story is from Afghanistan. Everybody say Afghanistan. And I think it's important to point it out because today when you're in Afghanistan, you think about war. If you look at Afghanistan and Google, you look at images, all you see is war. But what we forget, Central Asia, Middle East, we have beautiful stories that come from there. Poetry stories that come from there. So the story I want to start with is a story from Afghanistan. And the title of the story is Walking in Faith. Actually, that's not the real title. That's the title that I've chosen. Because when you connect with somebody's story and you make it your own, you got to do something with it. So today I'm calling it Walking in Faith. All right, so this story starts a long time ago. There was a king, and this king was very wealthy, and he had a lot of money, and he had a lot of gold. And you would think he was very happy about that, and he was, but at the same time, he was always very anxious about it too. Because you know how it is when you have a whole lot of stuff? There's a whole bunch of people who will be hating on you, right? So he was always nervous and anxious. Are these people really my friends, or do they just want to get to me because I'm rich and because I have all this wealth? And at night, he wouldn't sleep very well because every time he heard noise, they're coming to kill me because they're coming after my gold. So this king was very stressed. And so this king said, I need to figure out how to find some peace of mind because of all this wealth, I have no peace of mind. So he disguised himself as a beggar and went into town to see, can I find people to help me how to find peace of mind? So he went disguised as a beggar, and he looked in the marketplace, and he saw people arguing and talking, and okay, these people have no peace of mind. So he kept walking, and it started to get a little bit dark, and he walked past this house, and it was, not a wealthy house, just a regular house. And then he looked in, and I saw this man sitting, and his face was all aglow, and this man was like, oh, wow. So look at this peace that this man has. So it's like, this is it. I need to ask this man how he is so peaceful, so calm. So he knocked on the door, and the man came and opened the door, and the man said, what can I do for you? He said, well, I'm just a poor beggar, and would you mind, and could you feed me? The man said, sure, come on in. And the man said, I don't have a whole lot to share. I have some bread and I have some water, but you're welcome to sit here with me. And so the king sat down. And so as he was talking, he said, sir, what do? You seem so calm. You seem so peaceful. He said, well, I'm just a poor shoe cobbler. I don't make a whole lot of money, but I get by every day. I can go to the square and fix some shoes, and I can make some money. And with that, I buy this little bit to eat, and that's really all I need. He said, really, that's all? And you satisfied? So and the man said, well, let me share this with you. This is what I do every day. Before I go out, I take a deep breath. I go like this. Okay, do it with me. Go like this. And I say to myself, day by day, I walk in faith that all will be well. He said, and when I do that, everything always turns out. He said, oh, well, thank you so much. So the king left. He thanked his host, and he left. And the king was excited, like, yes, I've learned something. But as he started walking home, it's like, yeah, but I bet you if that man gets into trouble, I bet he won't be that calm and peaceful anymore. I don't trust it. So I need to figure something out. So what he did, he had one of his people go to the square where the man would fix his shoe, and he put up a big sign that says, people can no longer fix shoes on this square. And so he was waiting the whole day. It's like, oh, I wonder what this man is going to do now. I bet you he will not be so calm and peaceful as he was before. And so he waited till it was evening, put on his beggar's clothes, and went to the man's house. And he looked in the window, and he saw the man, and the man was all aglow. And he had more food on the table. He's like, what? So he knocked on the door. Hey, oh, you're back. Well, come on in. He said, well, today I'm so glad that you're here because I not only do I have water and not only do I have bread, but I also have some cheese and some wine. You are welcome to join me. He's like, oh, okay. Thank you. Well, how was your day? He said, well, as a matter of fact, I went to the square where I always fix my shoes, and there was this big sign that said I couldn't fix shoes. So I did this. I went like this. Do with me. And I said to myself, day by day, I walk in faith that all will be well. And as I was at the square, I looked and I saw there was a well at the square where people were kind of fighting to get the water out. And I was like, well, maybe I can help. So I went over and helped people with the water. And then I started carrying people their jugs with water and took them home. People started paying me for helping me with their water. And guess what? I made more money than what I normally made if I would have been cobbling shoes. And the king said, oh, okay, well, that's great. That's wonderful. And the king left. Man, I cannot, but no, it's just coincidence. Coincidence. I'm going to get him this time. All right. Next day came, king had another plan set up. And the king was, looking, okay, can't wait to go and find out, see what has happened now. And what the king had done, he had sent one of his guards. He said, I want you to go to the square. You're going to see a man there helping people with water. I want you to take him, and I want you to put him in our army. I want you to make him one of the guards. And make him work, but do not pay him at the end of the day. And the man did as the king said. So at the end of the day, king put on his garbs, went out. I got him now. Let me see what he's got today. So he goes, and he sees the man all aglow and peaceful. So he knocked. Hey, sir, you are back. Please come and join in. It so happened, and I have bread, I have water, I have wine, I have cheese, I have meat, I have vegetables, I have a feast. You are so welcome to join. He's like, oh, okay. Well, can you tell me about your day? He's like, well, it so happened I went to my new place of work that I had created. I was going to help with the water, and the guard came. The guard from the king, and told me that I was required. I had to go with him, and he made me one of the palace guards. And he gave me all this gear. And I had to work for him, and then he said at the end of the day, but he was not going to pay me till the end of the month. He said, wow, and what did you do? I said, well, I did this. Do it with me. Day by day, I walk in faith that all will be well. And so he said, and so then I had this plan. And so I took my sword, because he gave me a beautiful sword, and I took it to the pawn shop. Took it to the pawn man, and I gave him my sword, and I collected all this money, and I figured by the time I get paid, I can get the sword back. And I know how to fix shoes, and so I'm handy with my hands. So I made this sword out of wood, right? And I made the handle to look like the real sword, and so I stuck it in. So nobody knows I have a wooden sword, I have a fake sword. And the king said, oh, really? Okay, that's nice. So the king left. He said, this time I got him. All right? And so now they're at the palace, and the man is working, the shoe cobbler is working at the palace. And it so happens somebody had stolen a watermelon, and this person was brought forth. And this person was begging for life. So you don't understand. My family was hungry. I didn't meet, I'm sorry, but I had to steal. And so the king actually came down, right? And so the man, of course, did not recognize, because he'd always seen the king in beggar's clothes, but this time the king came. So this man had stolen. And so he points to the shoe cobbler. He said, I want you to pull out your sword and cut this man's hand off. So the cobbler did this. He went like this. And he said to himself, Then he did this. He raised his arms. And he said, oh, Almighty God, you are so wise and so powerful. Please bestow your wisdom upon us and show us that if this man is indeed guilty, that he is guilty. But if he is innocent, then turn my sword into wood and let me pull out my sword and show everybody that this man is innocent and that he can walk free. And so he pulled out his sword. And then the king went, okay, all right, I give. All right. So they let the man go, and the king called him over and said, you do not recognize me, but I have been the man who's been coming to your house every night because I've been trying to learn how to be at peace. And I he said, I don't want to ask you if you will come in my palace and be my advisor and teach me about how you do this and how you live life. And so the story ends that this man not only became his advisor, but he became his best friend. And they lived together in this palace, happily ever after. Okay. And so I like this story because it's a fun story. But to me, there's also a message in there, right? And I saw somebody made the remark like, I like the story, but, it kind of teaches that poor people, they just need to pray and God will fix things. No, that's not what this story is about. That's not what this story is about. First of all, it teaches you that sometimes you have to stop and go like this, right? And you need to get inspired, or you need to get your strength from somewhere. You need to get your inspiration from somewhere. That's one thing, that we need to take the time to be inspired. And then when you get the inspiration, when somebody whispers something in your ear, whether you believe that's God or Jesus or leprechauns or whatever, then you have to act, right? Because we get inspired and we get told what to do, or we get ideas what to do, but then you have to act. You actually have to do something. This king was anxious, but he did something about it. He went out searching for something. And this man, whenever he got an inspiration, wherever it came from, whenever it came, he acted upon it. Right? And so I want to start with that story because I want to get back to that idea of inspiration, that idea of tapping into whatever it is that inspires us and that carries us and that pushes us forward, and then you have to act. It's not enough to just get the idea. It's not enough just to be inspired, but you have to act. Okay, a little bit too fast. Okay, so this evening, what I want to do, first of all, you all have a theme in terms of Martin Luther King celebration. I've paid attention. And you talk about unity and community, so you talk about the importance of building community, and you have all kinds of activities to promote that idea of building community. And secondly, you also have this theme about defining America, which is an interesting theme, which is different than what you had the previous year, where you had Cherokee, was it community, culture, connections, right? Because to me, and again, you've all interpreted this in a lot of different ways, to me that theme was about a vision, about who we want to be, but defining is an action word. Defining is about doing. Right? Defining, and in your description, you talk about, you're going to do that through reflection. So who is it that we want to be, right, as Americans in this country? Who are we? And we're going to be bold enough and be daring enough to reflect upon how we came to be who we are. So tonight, what I want to talk about is a little about this context of community, right? And again, to your campus, you've chosen this theme of community. So what is the context? Right? And how do we build community? And what do we run up against? Why is it so hard? Because why do we need the theme if it's so easy? We have the theme, we've chosen it for a specific reason. So what do we run up against when we try to do that? And I want to talk to you a little bit about theory also because, within an academic arena sometimes, theory is important, but a lot of times we get stuck in the theory, right? And we have all these beautiful, fantastic theories, and then we still don't move on. So theory is important, but to me, theory is a lens. It steers you a certain way, but the ultimate goal is always we're going to have the theory so we can ultimately do something. All right, so I want to talk to you a little bit about theory, and that, again, how does that translate in what we want to do? So in order to do that, I need to tell you another story. To start, when we start talking about community, and this is a story about my son, my oldest child. This is one of his or two of his drawings. My son is an artist, and about 10, 11 years ago, I took my son to go to college. I will not name the name of the college, but he went to one of the top art colleges in this country, and it was my first one, my firstborn, taking my baby to college, and so we're driving 10, 12 hours, I was like, I'm going to leave my baby. When I got there, it was kind of okay. Because these artists, y'all a little bit different. Artists are a little bit different. So when we got there, it's like, yes, you're going to be with your people. Go be with your people. And I was excited. This is going to be a good thing. Go, right? And even, when he met his best friend, let me tell you how that went. So they got in this bus. They looked at each other. I like robots. Do you like robots? Yes. And they were best friends. This is, different people. So go be with your people. So anyway, so we're there on this campus. And we're in this basketball arena, and, you know, and it's like, oh, you're one of us. We're so happy that you're here. African-American students, stand up. Latino students, stand up. Asian students, Native Americans, international, stand up. Look at how diverse we are. And yes, it was impressive. Look at all the diversity. Great. 3 weeks later, he calls me and says, Ma, guess what? We're having art history. We're skipping African art. We're skipping Asian art. We're skipping oceanic art. All we're going to do is study European art history. So it's nice that you talk about all the diversity that you have. It's really nice that you point that out. But when it comes to what story is being told, right? What story is being hailed as the valid story, the important story, that of course we're going to tell that story. There's a story that becomes the dominant story, you know? And what happens to those other stories, right? Those become less valid, invalid, forgotten, overlooked. Oh, if we have some time left over, extracurricular, right? And so what we have, you know, so we have this dominant story, and then we have the story of all these others. Now, let me be clear, there's nothing wrong with this story. I like this story too. But it's what happens with all these other stories, right? And so we have this system where one story has written and become dominant, and those others that have become less valid. And so what bothers me is not just that my son did not get to hear about African heritage, but every other student in the class didn't get to hear about it either, right? And the problem is that this has become our normal. This has become our normal. So the fact that these stories are overlooked or silenced or put by the wayside has become our normal. And it's not just about the content about these stories, but it's also about how we do stories, how we do science, how we do knowledge. There's a certain way that we have, a dominant way. Then there's all those other ways that are, oh, they're cute, but they're not as valid, right? And so in my job, my challenge is to make all those stories valid and heard and appreciated. That's the challenge, right? And so the challenge is, can we do this? Can we connect with all those other stories that we normally don't hear from, right? And so, and this didn't happen overnight. You know, this took hundreds of years to get to this place. And that's why, so even though we say we want to do this, like, we have all kinds of mechanisms in place that keep us here. And so I prefer to talk about the dominant story and this of the other. You hear a lot of talk about white privilege, and white privilege is a thing. Again, it's a theory. Yes. But this is not just about white privilege, right? Sometimes it's about white privilege. Sometimes it's about white people and people of color. Sometimes it's about able-bodied and disabled people. Sometimes it's about I have money and you do not. Sometimes it's about I'm from the city and you're from the country. Sometimes it's about heteronormativity and LGBT, So at given, that dominant story, it varies. And at any given moment, can we be in that dominant position? Now, again, there's nothing wrong with being up here. Shoot, I kind of like being up here, right? Because this is about power. This is about serious power. But I can say, you know what? I have a PhD, so, or I can say, I have a PhD, so I do this. That's all up to you. What do you do with that position? At any given moment, are you in a position? Are you in this position? What do you do? What do we do with that position? Right? And that's the challenge. So when we're talking about community, we are at a point that we are starting to acknowledge that, yes, we have these inequalities. And it's not just limited to education. All our systems have this inequality embedded in them, right? And so and so imagine if you are used to that your story always gets told. You always get to speak first. You get to speak for other people, right? So there's a very powerful connotation when being in the dominant position. Right? There's also some very powerful connotation when you are used to always being overlooked. When you're used to, well, they're not going to mention my name anyway, or they're going to mispronounce my name. When you start getting used to that, you don't open your mouth anymore after a while. Right? You get used to that. Right? So when it comes to this, we all have these mechanisms, that when we try, we go right back to this. Right? So this requires work. This requires serious work to try and make a connection with all those stories. And so even think you can be here and have a governing position about these people down here, and you don't have to know anything about their story. That's serious power. You don't even have to know them, anything about them. Right? All right. I didn't want to depress you all. I just want to, okay. So, so in this approach, in this work, when we're talking about community, so what I had to do is I wanted to an approach to looking at this, and especially, from a knowledge perspective, I had to go to the people who know this position the best. So I had to go to the indigenous people. There's nothing who knows like them what it is to be marginalized, to be overlooked, to be silenced, et cetera, et cetera. I had to look at them. I had to look at that scholarship. And that scholarship exists. It's there. You have to look for it, but it's there. When we talk about Native people and Native American from the United States, from the Maori, from Africa, there's a knowledge there from people who have been at the bottom. We say, okay, how are we going to make a connection and make those stories heard and make those stories valid? So there's certain things that I get from that knowledge perspective. First, you might have heard of Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a term that we get from Southern Africa, and I am because we are. So this idea that you're connected with everybody. The family that kind of took me in when I came to the U.S., they're Cherokee and Choctaw, and so in the Lakota language, they talk about aho metakuyasi, and metakuyasi means me and all my relations. So these mean the same thing. So the fact that as a person, I am connected to anything and everybody, right? So that's the starting point. So it always starts with us. It starts with community. It doesn't start with me as a person, right? In Suriname, where I come from, they say, even though you see me as one person, at any given moment am I connected to all different kinds of forces that walk with me, that support me, et cetera, et cetera. So you're always representing. So that's why when you mess up, you put your whole family to shame. A little bit of a burden, but, But again, the idea is never just about you, but your starting point is you are part of a community. You are the extension of a community, right? Okay, so spirituality and reciprocity, again, and I can say a lot about spirituality, but it also starts with how do you see yourself as being in the world, right? How do you engage this world? And so at the core of how we relate to each other, there has to be some reciprocity, okay? One of the things about indigenous knowledge is that they understand that knowledge is localized. So even though we are native people, if I'm native people from North Dakota, the way I do something is very different from a native person from Peru. And I do not expect it to be the same because, again, I'm connected to my environment, and my environment here is very different from my environment in Peru. Okay? And so when I studied psychology, I studied Jung and Freud and Adler. And then I went to Ghana, and there they study Jung and Freud and Adler. And then I went to Haiti, where 90+ of the people believes in voodoo, but they study Jung and Freud and Adler. That dominant story, right? And so it's very different when you say, okay, not only is this dominant, everybody, this knowledge goes for everybody. So in the indigenous, we acknowledge, like, well, your knowledge and the way you engage the world is different, Okay, so rather than knowledge as the pursuit of findable facts, knowledge is a shared truth that are part of and stand in relationship with. Okay, that's a lot of words. And so when it comes to knowledge, again, our traditional way of doing knowledge that, I have studied, I've read a lot of books, so the knowledge is now within me. And what we're saying is, no, the knowledge is what exists between us and how we exchange and the relationship we have with that knowledge. So also, you cannot own it. It's not yours to own. Now, this one is a difficult one. So there's an element of knowledge that you don't necessarily have access to directly. Now, in our academic system, it's like, okay, what are the facts? What are the answers? And I want to know them yesterday, right? And part of being in this position is I should have access to any and all knowledge whenever I want to, and I should be comfortable in any and all time when I pursue that knowledge. And what this now is saying is, you're not entitled to that knowledge. Not yet. Maybe you're not spiritually ripe yet. Maybe you're not mature enough yet. Maybe you need to do some work to earn that knowledge. Because when you go to your elders and somebody's in their 70s and 80s, who are you as some pipsqueak? Who do you think that you have right to that knowledge, right? So you go to your elders with some profound question, and they give you a beautiful metaphor or a proverb, and you're like, okay, thank you. You don't know what it means, and that's all they give you. Or some beautiful, lengthy story with not a real conclusion. You just, okay, thank you. And then a week later, a month later, a year later, you go, oh, now I get it. When the time is right, when you have done the work, then you will know. again, which is very different from how we are trained in academia, right? Pursue the knowledge, get the knowledge, connect the knowledge. Who says that you're entitled, right? And so sometimes you have to sit with that. You have to work with it. Sometimes you have to meditate. You have to pray. You have to do something, right? So it's a very different way of dealing with knowledge, okay? So axiology of relational accountability, also the fancy word. So what it talks about is this idea that when we do the work, when we pursue knowledge, there has to be some, as far as our ethics, there needs to be some accountability that, it's based in relationship. Everything is about relations. We cannot just go and gather data and gather information. You have to give something back, right? You have some responsibility to the people who are giving you, who are providing you with information. And lastly, so especially those scholars who are producing indigenous knowledge, all of them are concerned with doing this, right? All of them are really working on this pursuit of equality and this pursuit of social justice. And so this last one, I want to highlight a little bit more, because what I found in my work, in particular when it comes to promoting inclusive learning and working environment, I really connected with this idea of the blues aesthetic. And so this is also to show you how theory can help you in terms of creating a plan of action. So theory is not just because it's interesting to analyze, but also how it shapes how we do stuff. So the blues aesthetic comes from African American culture, and the blues aesthetic talked about when you have the blues, we're saying is you have to go through the pain in order to end up in the good place. You have to go through it, right? And you have to be brutally honest about that pain. Lay it out there, give it to me, right? Which is very different from how we tend to avoid anything that's uncomfortable. Oh, why you got to talk about racism? Man, that's just, we are just having such a good time. Why you got to talk about it? Sexism, why you, right? And so this is, no. You got to, you have to. In order for us to get through it, you have to go through it, and you have to be brutally honest about it. Another thing that they say is that the blues, the songs can be very painful and be very sad, but the music is beautiful, right? And the music is also driving. So on the one hand you have this pain, but on the other hand you have this beauty who are always interlocked. And that even though things are painful, something beautiful is never far beyond, right? They go hand in hand. Another thing about the blues is that it's music of, we say, expansion. And it has taken in all these other elements. So it started as an African-American art form, but it has become American music, right? And that's the beauty when we're talking about inclusivity, right? That we start again with this dominant, but we need to start, including and expanding and incorporating those stories so that they become our story and an inclusive story, all right? And so then the last thing about the blues, and that you also find in jazz, that there comes a point where you have to improvise. There comes a point like, okay, what you got? And you can't say, well, tell me what to play. No. Right? And so what I encounter a lot in this work, that people say, well, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do. So they do nothing. In the blues, that does not fly. And they call it your moment of truth. What you got? You better do this. And get it from somewhere and come up with something. But in our academic arena, we are so trained that not only do I want to do it, but I want to do it right. Right? I want to do it correct. And if I cannot do it correct, if I do not have all the answers, then I will not do anything. I'm not going to say it because I might say the wrong thing. Right? And we have a reward system in our academic system that's all based on doing it right, getting the right answer. We don't say, show me where you mess up. Show me your mistake. Fall on your face. That's where you learn. That's not what we do. Right? And so one of the things, again, that we get is like, that's your moment of truth. Show me what you got. Go for it. And so I find, again, a lot of people that come to me, tell me what to do. Give me the 10 steps. There's so many steps, the best practices. I don't know what the best practices are. Best practice today might be your worst practice tomorrow. I don't want to show me, tell me where you screwed up. Tell me when it blew up in your face. Now, that's interesting, right? And so, again, what we get is like, this is your moment of truth. What you going to do? Are you going to be bold enough to step out there and be creative? So that's what we get from the blues. And then I use that. Again, that drives me, that helps me as I'm thinking, how can I help people, in creating this new community? And then there's another one. Oh, I'm going too fast. And it's called Holy Hip Hop. And so I'm starting to combine these two. And so, there's this lady who has written this book about holy hip hop, and what she talks about, in particular in LA. In the 80s and 90s, you had this war on drugs, you had the economy that was going down, you had, all this hardship, these young men who are being, picked up left and right. So there was a lot of chaos, and on top of that, you had all these natural disasters. You had earthquakes, and you had floods, and all this stuff was going on. And so in the midst of that, you had young people who used hip-hop to convert, to whether it be Christianity, Islam, or whatever. So the hip-hop and the rap is not about protest, but it's about conversion, right? It's about creating something new. It's about, bringing in to restoring something. And so they call it earthquake music, and it's like, yes, because that's what we're trying to do. I need to shake stuff up for you. I need you to go like this. And then, and then again, you have to be creative and come up with something new. So that, when I saw that, I was like, yes, I can use that. That's the metaphor, the theoretical vision that I want to use. So this idea of, we are creating earthquakes. All this time I've been up here, what'd you say? That I'm actually equal to these? Shh, that's an earthquake right there. That's an earthquake. All this time my story was important. What you saying? I had a statue here that said that's my ancestor. What you saying now that he exploited people? That's an earthquake, right? What are you going to do with that? That is unsettling. That is not comfortable, right? That's your moment of truth, and from there you have to restore and recover. Another thing they talk about in this book, they talk about, some of these streets that used to be with businesses are now boarded up. So visually, you do not see us, right? And in the city, we put a lot of emphasis on what you see. And so even though you do not see us, our stories are here. And so that's another thing that resonated for me, because a lot of times you don't want to see us. Those who are down here, you are actively ignoring us, right? We are not being seen. So you have to listen to our stories. You have to listen to the raps. You have to listen because we are here, right? And we have to also make ourselves known, because a lot of times we are so used to not being seen that we stay quiet. So also we have to help these people. Like, no, there is a story there, and your story is worthy of being heard. It's not just about what these people have to do. It's also about how we have to help these people here. This comes from both ways, right? So in terms of, in terms of, again, of a theory and about being seen, I want to give you another example. I have, in my team of researcher, I have one woman, she's from Morocco. In the Netherlands, we have a lot of people from Morocco and from Turkey. And so she wears the headscarf, and she was part of a research unit that would go into school, and they would go and observe. And she said, and so it was her and I think 4 white women. And she said, and whenever she would go into the school and would say, hello, I'm here again, she said they would actively ignore me. She said the moment I would walk in, they would start shuffling papers, anything to not look at me and to not say hello to me, right? And then my colleagues would come in and they would go, hey, hi, well, we're so happy that you're here. She said it happened every single time, right? Every single time, right? And so what do you do with that, right? What do you do with that? And a lot of times, again, we want to look at her and what did she do with it? But my thing is like, what did your 4 colleagues do? If we are a team, why is that acceptable, right? Why is that acceptable, right? And so so these are the kinds of experiences that we need to address if we want to create this new, what is acceptable for us as a community in how we engage and how we stand into the world and how we stand up for each other and how we are allies, right? And so these are the kind of things that we have to start addressing with each other. And a lot of times it's about, well, this is your moment of truth. What you're going to do? You're going to say something, you're going to not say something, you're going to play it safe. Well, it doesn't really happen to me. But this happens to your colleague every single time. And then we wonder, oh, she quit her job. She left. We don't know where she went. Yeah. Because there's only so much of that you can take. Right? All right. Okay. So why is it so hard? So number one, this is hard because we have these mechanisms that are in place to make sure that we maintain this difference. And so it's not about are people nice, are people not nice. Yeah, there's some people who are not nice. But I think the majority of people is, it's very nice. But we have been conditioned. Again, this didn't happen overnight. This was 500 years plus in the making, right? And so we get so caught up in people are nice, people not, as opposed to what are these systems, why we fall into these traps of going back to the same way of doing things. And so language is a very important part of that. You've heard that language, you've heard the expression of, when somebody's a victim. Stop being such a victim. Have you heard that one? Right? And so now, when you think about the word victim means somebody perpetrated something against you. If you've been robbed, you're a victim. You got hit by a car, you were a victim, right? But when we are talking about when people starting to express their stories and people say, stop being a victim, that's not what we're talking about. What we're saying is, your story is bothersome to me. That's what we're saying. And I don't want to hear it. I don't want to deal with it. Which is very different from the blues that says, no, I have to hear it. And I have to hear the brutal honesty about it. He's like, no. Stop being such a victim. You know what happens? Okay. Because you just have to say that once. And then okay. And then we don't say it anymore. So when my friend said, every time I go in here, nobody's great. Oh, well, you're making such a big deal. I'm sure they don't mean it. I'm sure, look, stop being such a victim. You think she brought it up again? She didn't bring it up again. That's what we do, right? So our language is very important. And there's another one that we use. White privilege. Woo, yeah, I said it. And again, it has its place in terms of theory. It's a wonderful theory, and it helps us understand, but we also starting to use it to shut people up. Have you noticed? Yeah, well, you have white privilege. End of conversation, we're done. I've seen it happen. It's like, what was the purpose of saying that other than to shut that person up? Right? And so, and especially, we're in academia, we learn all these terms, and it's great, but we're starting to use them as weapons. So we have to be conscientious of the language that we use and how we relate to each other, and the effect that it has. Right? And so that's what makes it so. And another thing, I was just sharing with these young students, in the Netherlands we have a word that's called gezellig or gezelligheid. And gezellig means comfortable. Right? And in Dutch culture, and we have it here too, but in Dutch culture in particular, it's very important. Everybody gezellig, everybody happy, everybody comfortable. You work there, everybody at a certain point, they all stop, you get tea with cookies, because everybody, everything has to be gezellig. Right? And so when we start having these conversations, that's not gezellig, that's not comfortable, right? So, man, it was so gezellig, why you have to go talk about, right? And so when you dare to break the gezelligheid, they will cut you off. You will no longer get invited to drink the tea and the cookies, right? Or you want to say something, but but if I say it, I'm going to break the gezelligheid, and so let me not say anything. Right? And perhaps it's not as strong here, but this whole thing about being uncomfortable. This uncomfortable, yes it is. Yes it is. It is uncomfortable. And so I think what we have to do, in particular when we are in an academic setting where we put so much emphasis on this, is to be honest and say, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to go there, but guess what? You're going to feel some stuff. And it might not be comfortable. Right? But I need you to go there anyway. And it's going to be okay. That's the kind of space that we have to create, right? So that's why this is not, like I said, a lot of times people come to me and they want the quick solutions, and we've been trained and evidence-based and all of this. But ultimately, what stops us from moving forward is these kind of issues that come up, and so then we fall back and we go back into our old ways of doing things. So we have to create these spaces and encourage each other to go in and connect with each other's stories and be uncomfortable at times, right? But also to celebrate what we have, right? We just celebrated the story from Afghanistan. It's not just war. Right? Okay. So from theory to action. So one, you have to understand that it starts with you, right? And that we have to be honest, and it also means that we have to be vulnerable. And it doesn't mean that you have to be all touchy-feeling with everything and everybody, but be aware that stuff happens when we try to take actions that influence how we react, how we respond, and that we have our conditionings. We have our conditionings, okay? You have to understand how the world works. You have to understand this did not happen overnight. And we have our patterns and we have our systems, and you have to be aware of that. And then you have to understand what your place and your power is. And not your place in terms of your limitation, But sometimes we cannot even see, well, where do I belong? Where do I fit? What can I do? No matter how big or how small, there's something that you can do. Right? And that you are more powerful than you think you are. Sometimes it's a matter of speaking up when nobody else will. Right? And in particular, when it comes to students, we have a lot of students here. That in this kind of work, your vision, your energy, your ideas, but also your mistakes have to be essential, to creating this new vision. When we talk about defining, America, when we talk about defining, our students play a very important role in that. And at the same time, I also have to add that we also have to support our staff and our faculty. Because if our staff and faculty don't feel safe and secure and bold enough, you cannot expect our faculty and staff to create spaces where they can support their students. All right? So we have to create spaces for our faculty. If they don't feel like they can be open, then you wonder why. Well, why don't you create a space that's open in your classroom? Right? But it's important that we don't speak for students or over students, but that we include them in the process. They have the energy and the vision. A week ago, we were going to have a session with students from design. Because again, I have my lecture about inclusive education, and we want to know how can we make this issue more visible and more accessible to the campus. So we're going to invite design students and any other student that wants to come, but they had exam week last week. So in my lecturate, I also have a student branch. I have junior researchers who specifically work with students. And so I was like, well, I'm going to be gone this week, so it's all on you. And I had all faith in them, so they had 25 people show up. 25 students and 3 faculty that came up with ideas about how we can make inclusion and diversity more visible, more accessible, and they come up with stuff that I couldn't even think of, right? And those are the kind of things that we have to do. Well, of course we're going to include students, right? We have 28 lecturers. That means I'm in the University of Applied Sciences, so you have research groups, and most of the other research groups are focused on the professional world. So we have one that deals with robots and one that deals with health and technology. But mine is specifically focused on helping the university change. Mine is the only one that has a specific unit and specific attention to including students in that process. That's unfortunate. It's not to say the students are not engaged in other forms, but that should be our, well, of course, right? If this is about us as a campus, it cannot just be the staff or the faculty or the research. We have to include students, right? Okay. So there's work to do. So what it starts with a vision. Well, you have a very clear vision. You have a vision about community. You have a vision about building community. You have a vision about redefining who we are, okay? You have to remind yourself of your conditioning, and understand, again, that the way we sometimes handle is that we are conditioned because we have our parents. I want to share another story with you. One of the projects that I have done is I have, with my students, and I have friends in the transgender community, we have written stories for children in transgender families. And I started it in the US, and my friend taught in theater, and so then we created a reader's theater and started performing these stories. I went to the Netherlands and kind of picked that up. And so I had a group of young people who were doing, and we were doing reader's theater. And one of the young people is non-binary transgender. And the friends that I have, I'd never, encountered somebody who was non-binary, right? The friends that I have gone from female to male or male to female, but this was new for me. And so at some point, we've been working together, we've been performing together. At some point, this young person came to me and said, I need to tell you something. You keep gendering me, and that hurts. And my first instinct, yes, but, my first instinct, or I didn't mean to. And I was like, shut up and listen. And so I just listened. Because I know it was an act of bravery for them to come to me, first of all, right? And so I just listened. And they expressed, that it had been hurtful. I hadn't done it publicly, thank goodness. But when we were rehearsing, when we were together, I kept referring to them as she, right? And they were still in the process, but, and I listened. And again, and all these instincts, all these, you want to apologize, it was not about me. It was not about me. I had to be humble and I had to listen. And I say, You're absolutely right. And this is what I can promise you. I'm going to do my best to do better. I cannot promise that I will not make a mistake. I probably will screw up a few more times, but I'm going to do my best and I'm going to pay attention to that. And then what I had to work on, because then your next go-to things like, oh, you're so terrible, you're so stupid, you think you're, you think you're an ally and you're so stupid, So I had to stop myself from doing that, right? Because again, we have our conditioning, you think you're so great, here you go screwing up. Yep, you did. Now forgive yourself and let's get on with it. Or I can spend a lot of time and energy on chastising myself about how terrible and how horrible I was, right? You've apologized, fix it the best you can, and let's move on, right? So again, when I say it starts with you, that's the work. It is work, because we have our habits and we have our patterns, right? But if we're going to do this differently, this is what it requires, okay? We have to appeal to each other's brilliance and spirit, not our intellect. Not to say there's anything wrong with intellect. But we are more than just what we accomplish in terms of grades or what we write on paper, and it's about who do you bring forth as a person, right? Who are you? What do you have to offer as a person? That we have to look further than just that. We have to give each other permission to feel, and that means creating spaces of safety, right? And we have to connect with each other's stories. We have to learn how to listen. There's a difference between hearing and listening. When you hear how something, when I was talking to my friend, at first I heard them, and I was just busy with how it affected me. Oh my God, I can't believe that. It's not about me. I had to listen what is going on with them, right? So when you listen, you place yourself in the other person. Where are they coming from? What is this about? And not about how this affects and how this hurts me, okay? Silence is a big one. We're not comfortable with silence. So sometimes when things are silent, we talk too fast. Oh my goodness, nobody's saying anything, so I'll say something because we get uncomfortable. Or we do the opposite. Or we withdraw in silence. Well, if I say something, it's not going to be gezellig, or if I say something, it's going to be the wrong thing, so I'm not going to say anything. Right? And so what I'm asking people to do is to be conscientious about silence. If you choose to be silent, then choose to be silent. Right? Do it in a way like, you know what? Let me not react. Let me sit with that for a minute. Let me just, right? And so then I purposely choose to be silent. Don't withdraw into silence because it's the easy thing to do. Sometimes you have to be brave and bold. It's like, I think I have to speak up about something. And you have to break the silence. And not everybody's going to be happy when you do that. But so when you step forward to break the silence, do it with a purpose. When you step back to withdraw into silence, do it with a purpose as opposed to out of convenience. That's one that's very big. Okay? And silence is powerful. Silence is very powerful. I'm sharing all these personal stories. Let me tell you another story. So when I was in grad school, my first master's degree in clinical psychology, you can take an elective. And I had done my undergraduate in physical education and psychology. So for fun of it, I'll take a physical education elective. So I took sports marketing. And for my teacher's assistant position, I was assistant swim coach. So the coach called me over. He said, I hear you're going to take this class, sports marketing. He said, don't take that class. He's like, this man hates blacks and he hates women. Do not take that class. Now, when somebody tells me I cannot do something, I was like, so of course I took the class. What you mean? If I'm a good student, it shouldn't matter. It should not matter what I look like. So I took the class. The man warned me. But I took the class anyway. So I go into the class, and every class started with, well, in 1950-something, he would start talking about football. I was like, oh, man, I'm doomed. Every class, he would start reminiscing about football in the 50s and how he hated Title IX. I was like, oh, man, right? So anyway, so I'm taking this class, and one day, he had a box with paper. He was handing out 101 activities for fundraisers. And the paper was yellow. You know when paper has been sitting in a box for a very long time? So he's walking around handing out these papers. I'm sitting in class, and I'm looking at the activities. He's still walking around, and it says, item number 75, slave auction. And I was like, slave auction? How old is this piece of paper anyway, right? Everybody just went, nobody looked at me. And I was just like, am I the only one that's upset by this? Really? Right? And he's like, don't Don't make such a big deal about it. Just mean you rent somebody out for the day. You know, don't be so sensitive. That's what he said. Okay. I already knew who this man was. I was warned about who this man was. It was not about him. It was about my peers. Nobody said anything. Everybody turned away from me. And again, my thing is, really? So I'm the only one who thinks there's something wrong here? And then when I left the classroom, then people want to come and whisper to you, yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm like, You should have broken the silence right there and then, right? That's when I needed you. And then people all feeling guilty and talking to me and whispering to me in the hallway, nah, it's all right, right? Sometimes you have to break the silence. You have to be brave. When you know, and the thing is, you feel it right here, like, ugh, this is not right. Right? I'm at a point right now, I listen to my belly, like, got to speak up. Right? However the chips may fall. All right? Okay. Don't be behind, I don't know, or I feel uncomfortable. That's your moment of truth. Do it anyway. That's your moment to improvise. That's your moment to go, day by day, right? You get inspired. Something will come. Something will come. You will get, and sometimes it's just about when you breathe, the blood starts, what do you believe, in spirit, or you believe, okay, the blood is flowing in your brain and you will know what to say. Something will come, but do something, right? Don't withdraw into silence. Don't withdraw into apathy and not move, okay? Rely on each other as resources. Remind you that there is an urgency, and again, you have to be brave, okay? So, you go to the 3 basic elements. Number 1, you have to care. You hear a lot these days about, there's the business model of diversity, and if you put a diverse team together, we make lots of money, right? And what we're trying to do, we're trying to bypass the whole fact that this is about this. We try to make it about money. If you don't have this, if you don't use this, you're not going to get there. Right? It's not that simple about put the people together. No, because we have history, we have stories, we have things that don't connect. There's work there. So it has to come from a place of care. And there's some people who just don't care. How do we deal with that? Right? You start with those who do. You start with those who do. Right? You can't worry about that. You have to, you strengthen yourself and you build from there. And from there it will ripple out or not. You can't save everybody, but you start with those who do. Right? Courage. You have to be brave. This work is about being brave. When we talk about redefining, these are very interesting times. We could call them crazy times, but let's say interesting times, right? So, but it takes courage, and it's like in a very short time, it seems like everything has been turned upside down. And I'm in Europe now, it's the same there. It's, Paris blowing up, England, Brexit, the earthquake is real. It's the same there, so we have to be brave. But it's interesting, it's scary, but at the same time, it's also an opportunity because it's forcing us to be about this. Who are we as human beings? How do we redefine in terms of all this chaos within this earthquake? How are we going to put the pieces back together? So that requires that we are brave and start calling on things and speaking out and coming together. And the third thing is that you have to be humble. When I had to talk, to my friend, I had to be humble and say, shut up, it's not about you. Right? You have to be humble. And part of that is also, and this is a big one, you have to learn how to forgive. Ooh, yeah, I said it. Right? Because it's so easy. You know what you did? This was wrong. Yes, you got to forgive him anyway. Oh, that's a hard one. That's a hard one. Right? Because it's so much easier to stay there. You're now a monster. I'm done with you. It's so much easier. But we have to learn how to, yes, people will say dumb things. People will say stupid things. You got to forgive them anyway. And you have to forgive yourself because you are going to say stupid things and you are going to do dumb things. Right? If we're going to say, okay, this is your moment of truth, show me what you got, then you also have to expect people, they're going to fall, they're going to make mistakes. That's part of the story. And we have to forgive them and say, okay, I'm glad at least you tried. Come back and try again. Come back and try again. Come back and try again, because if not, then they'll leave and they don't come back. And we want this, right? We want that. Right. So last I want to close with, I mentioned to you I'm a Lyman T. Johnson scholar. Lyman T. Johnson is the person who integrated the University of Kentucky. And at the time, he was with the NAACP. At the time, there was the day law, and so within Kentucky, as many other places, black people and white people were not allowed to go to school together. So they went to court to fight for the right to go to the University of Kentucky. So they said, yes, he can come, but he's not allowed in the building. And so Lyman T. Johnson, and by then he already had his bachelor's degree, so his whole purpose for doing this was just to integrate the school. So he was allowed to go to school, and then they would open the windows, and then he could sit outside and listen, and that's how he took class. They were burning crosses on the lawns where he had to walk. So talk about not feeling welcome. It was very clear they were not happy he was there, right? But he did that so that I could go to school there at some point. He got a 4.0 that semester. So, so I never had an excuse not to do my homework because this man walked through the rain, snow, in the cold with lawns, with crosses burning on the lawns, sitting outside of a classroom window so I could go to school, right? So when we're talking about take a deep breath and where does your inspiration come from, whether it be Martin Luther King or the Lyman T. Johnsons or your mother who's praying for you, those are the shoulders that we stand on, right? And so it starts with, this is not about me. This is about us. This is about us as a community. And how we move forward is through our connection with all these people who made all kinds of sacrifices. And some people make big sacrifices. Some people make public sacrifices, like Martin Luther King. But like I said, it's your mama who's praying for you, right? It's your dad who's taking a second job so he can help you pay for this college education. Those people, right? Those people who are also part of our story so that we can be here, so that we can give something back and continue this story. Right? And so this is a very special area. I did my research. Cherokee lands. I talked about Indigenous. So there's a particular history here. Right? So when you take that breath, think about that. Even the people locally that were here that are no longer here, that have contributed to this place being here. This place started as a school for teachers. Right? It was a commitment because we want to educate people, and from there it grew and grew and grew, and look now what it is. Right? And so with that, I want to close, and again say thank you very much for having me. I hope I've contributed a little bit to your journey. And we close with, we kong, we kong. All right, thank you very much. Thank you. For those of you who would like to stay, we're going to take some questions, hopefully have some conversation with each other. Some of you have to go, I understand. Ooh, fancy couch. I feel like Oprah. Come and sit on my couch. Oh, wow.
I guess we're just... Hello? So we would like to open it up to questions. If you have any, we'll be down there if you want to come up to the mic so you can ask him as many questions as you want. You can raise your hand, and I'll come to you if you need me to. Don't be scared now.
Yes. You.
Maybe it was the African American people that were standing around him that were instigating him And, and then the student said that, well, he wasn't really disrespectful of the elder. And I've been, you know, looking at my Twitter feed and all sorts of things, and there are people that are for and against the student, but to me, I feel like if you're standing, you know, like 2 inches away, invading someone's space, I mean, that to me is disrespectful. So how would you answer the people that feel like this student, you know, he was just kind of an observer of the whole thing?
Yeah. Of course, I've seen it come by, too, on Facebook. I did not watch the video on purpose because I know it would just upset me. But what was interesting to me, so you know, and of course, everything has multiple versions. And so first it was, you know, this young man, and not just him, but that whole group of people, and they all had the MAGA hats, and you know, and they were yelling, "Build the wall," from what I hear. So there was more going on. So you had that group of people, then there was the Israelites were also played a part, and then the native people. And then what was interesting to me, so now they're doing an interview, but look who they're interviewing. So you have these 3 groups, who they're interviewing. The young man, right? You talk about whose story, who gets to speak first, right? To me, when you talk to the elder first, wouldn't the elder have the first right, you know, the first right to speak? So it was really interesting that, you know, and of course, in media it's about sensationalism and all this kind of stuff. But it was interesting, if there are 3 groups, who gets to speak first? You know, it's this young man, and he's you know, and you can talk about race, but you're going to talk about, he's the youngest one, you know? Go out of respect, at least, you know, start with the elder. That's you know, so I'm kind of observing it from far. Like I said, I didn't look at the video. And also, and when that happens, the reaction is always very swift, right? And we don't, and you can condemn, but it's one thing to condemn, and it's another thing to wish somebody, you know, you should die, and this kind of stuff, you know. So when I talk about, you know, forgiveness, you know, forgiveness has no place anywhere in these scenarios anymore, you know. We then wish the worst upon on this person right away, very quickly. And so my first reaction, again, was also like, here we go, and I thought it was terrible. But again, I did not look at it, and I didn't look at it on purpose, but what hit me is like, who gets to speak first? You know, that's all I can say about that. So we'll see how it plays out. But again, in a lot of these scenarios, things become polarized and extreme so quickly, and so verbally violent so quickly, and there's no room for consideration or for, you know, we just write people off. So, yeah. Yes, over there. Couldn't get the workout today.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for the very kind words and the presentation today. And I'm wondering if you could give us more examples. You talked about holy hip hop, and and I'm wondering if you could say more about people that have really embarked on that blues aesthetic and managed to communities that have seriously undertaken that project of inclusivity and been through the uncomfortable places and actually crafted perhaps even new identities around that. I mean, I'm thinking, for instance, about examples of South Africa, maybe successfully, not successfully, but at least there are at least an awareness that maybe a new national consciousness or a new national narrative of who we are of a people who have suffered through. And I'm wondering if you could say more about what it looks like. What would be some examples for us to study more in depth?
I don't know that many examples yet because everybody's trying to work it out as we speak. I think what was crucial in South Africa is that they started with the reconciliation, right? That they started with, we're going to start with forgiveness, because if we start with, this is what you did to me, and so you owe me, then we're not going to get there. So that was a big step. So they started with that. And that was very powerful, and I've studied more about reconciliation efforts. I know, for instance, there was one with Sierra Leone, also where the mothers whose sons had been murdered came to forgive the men who had done that. And in the description, what was really, and that was really beautiful was that, you know, some of these men were like, even though they were sitting there, they were not, how do you say, they're not really contrite, you know, or they were like, yeah, whatever, I'm here because I have to be here. It's not like, oh, I want forgiveness. They're like, yeah, whatever. But when they had to get up and go to these women and kneel in front of them, then they broke. Then something changed because, you know, you can hide up here, but when you put your whole body into it, and it's like, you know, and they had to bow in front of these, then something changes. So to me, that also shows the work. You know, this is not an intellectual endeavor. You have to take yourself into this movement. I know right now, because I also teach at the Academy for the Arts in Amsterdam. And so there's one young man, and he's of Surinamese descent. Everybody else is white, and he's in the directing. And he's like, well, you know, the curriculum is very white. He said, but whatever I bring up, he said, the teachers listen, and then the next day it is addressed. You know, and to him, he's like, that's just amazing. And so he said, you know, my story is not being told. He said, a lot of times he's just quiet, and he said, my story is not being told. The next week they had a tour. You have a tour through Amsterdam that shows you the history of slavery. They took the whole class. And then in the tour they said, you know, there's this house that you should visit where they show so-and-so. The next day they went to that house. And they are changing the curriculum based on students, when students bring up stuff, they are incorporating it. So to me, that's a beautiful example that also, it requires that humility, because a lot of times, look, I studied 15, 20 years to do this. What do you mean I got to change? You know? Because it's also like, what do you mean I'm not a good teacher? So, but these teachers, they say they want to do it, and they actually are doing it. And I think that's a beautiful example. And of course, it's not perfect, but I know to him it's making a difference, and to all the other students are starting to notice, and they are starting to speak up more. And so it's never just about the one person, but it's about, you know, again, we are connected. Everybody starts to have that experience. And so, but in terms of communities, yeah, I see everybody still trying to figure it out. And part of the struggle within academia, where I'm in the Netherlands, whenever they try something, it lasts maybe a year, 2 years, and then they go back to the way things were. Because it's very much based on procedures. And if we implement this procedure, and they always want the miracle procedure that will fix everything, and that does not work. Yes.
Hey, so I was wondering where you believe offering forgiveness ends and like apathy begins towards issues, because around here at least, a lot of people are very stuck in their ways, and they're very unwilling to change towards certain issues. And so just where do you think that stopping, like where should you stop offering forgiveness, or should you ever stop offering forgiveness?
That's a good question. And I know, and that's why I say it's a hard one, because I've had people say, no, I can't do that, you know. And so, because forgiveness also does not mean, you also have a responsibility to protect yourself and to take care of yourself. You know, if people perpetrate stuff against you, and you know, forgiveness is not about, okay, come on, you can hit me and you can hurt me, right? It's about, I understand that you are a human being, and in your humanity you make mistakes or whatever. But let's be clear, you know, after you have learned something, I do expect that your behavior will change, because I also have the right to protect myself, and then I have to decide how I'm going to do that, right? Can we still continue, or do I have to separate myself from you? So, but forgiveness is more about letting go for yourself, because if not, every time I see like, you know, remember that thing you did, you know, in the meantime, you living your life, and I'm like getting high blood pressure, right? So forgiveness is about that, and also about to continue forcing you to see these people as people, right? As opposed to this horrible monster, because they're not. You know, they're not. And when I was studying about the reconciliation, that's one of the things they said. It's so much easier to say they're murderers, they're horrible, they're monsters, but they're not. If they were a monster, then it's easy to put somebody aside. But I have to look at this. This is somebody else's child too, right? It's the same age as my son that he murdered, and how can I still look at this person, as a young man, as whatever, right? So that's why when I say it starts with you, it also starts with taking care of yourself. You know, this work it's emotionally, you know, so you have to learn how to take care of yourself. You know, and I'm open and I'm willing and I'm connecting, but at the same time I also have to say, okay, to hear and know further. So yeah, forgiveness does not mean that you just endlessly let people just, you know, perpetrate stuff. Yes.
Hi, I'm also an anthropology student here.
Mm-hmm.
I was just wondering what got you interested in anthropology and all that, because my focus is probably going to be cultural as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just want to know what got you interested
Sure.
in that.
I started with my undergraduate, I did physical education and psychology, and then I went on and did clinical psychology, and I worked as a therapist. And when I was out doing the therapy, I saw the role of culture, how important that was. And so I was trained to do therapy in a very specific way, but I saw, you know, people have their ways when it comes to what it means to be healthy. They have their specific ways. And so, you know, some people, they need to sing, and some people need, you know, we have our own ways. And so that's what it means, because to me, therapy was about they coming and telling their story, right? And there's all these different stories, and how we do story sometimes differs. There's not just one way of dealing with their story. So that's how I ended up in anthropology, and also because anthropology allowed me, I want people to be able to tell their stories, you know, in their ways. And in anthropology, I can do that. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you first. Just thank you.
You're very welcome.
One thing that I've had in my head is that this whole notion of different races or whatnot is an artificial construct. And even, you know, as Eastern Europeans or Southern Europeans were coming to the United States, you know, the WASPs or whoever was here, you know, of the European, more moneyed people, you know, the new hordes of people coming were not considered white.
Right.
And you know, as Slavic people were massacred at the Ludlow mining camp in New Mexico, and just this whole history of exploitation. And I have, you know, each of my ancestors is something different, but one of my ancestors, my grandfather, was Sicilian, and I look at, you know, if I look at Fox News and I look at the Supreme Court in the last few years, I look at the Sicilians and I look at Sicilian descendants and the Irish descendants who were horribly discriminated.
Yes.
Now that seems to be like, oh, it's our turn, now we get to discriminate. And it just drives me up a wall. It's like this racism thing, an anti-immigrant thing is this whole, it's hazing. It's like, welcome to America. Now it's, you know, your turn to get crapped on.
Right.
So since even whiteness is an artificial creation,
Right.
How do we undo that?
In 2 sentences or less, let's fix it. I said in 2 sentences or less, let's fix it. No, yes, and I mean, and part of it is knowing the history, because we keep repeating the same stuff. Right? We keep repeating the same stuff. I mean, it's the same in the Netherlands. There was a time when the Portuguese came, like, oh, then they were the bad guys. And then the Surinamese people, they were the bad guys. And then the Antillans, they were the bad guys. And as the Moroccans and the Turks, they were now as the Syrian refugees. It's like, really? You know, so we keep replaying. We keep reproducing. But that's why I'm saying, that's why it's a mechanism. And that's what we're up against. That's what we don't understand. We think like, oh, is it? No. You know, some reason it works. It maintains this separation, and we don't learn from these stories. And it's like, how much more research do we need to do? You know, so part of it is, to me, you know, it starts with the stories, and to understand that your story is my story, right? And my story is not that, you know, and making the connections with these stories. And I can be enlightened and inspired and enriched by your story. But we don't know enough about the history of these stories. But yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, and Irish people were, you know, were of color at one point, and you know, and all these, and then all of a sudden they were white, and it's You know, but somebody constructed that. Somebody went out of their way to do that. You know, and so it's amazing, really. Like how much, and we keep gathering data and information, and yet we keep doing this. So that's the challenge. But part of it is, you know, we need to start sharing our stories and treasuring those stories, you know, and embracing those stories. And the thing is, when you look at somebody, you don't know what their story is. Like, oh, that's black, so that means, oh, this person is white. You don't know, you know. And so a lot of times we have to go to the obvious stories, right? But also, if you have an illness where your body hurts, right? I can function until noon, but then I have to stop because my body hurts, but nobody can see it. The way you are in here, the way you are in class is different, right? That's part of your story. If you're here and your mother's in the hospital with cancer, the way you are in class is different. That's part of your story, right? You don't know, and especially this day and age, people are adopting children from all over the world. Don't assume that because you have a room full of white people that people are not of African descent or have brown children or what. You don't know. So our stories are a lot more connected than we think, but we have to take the time you know, to listen and to share those stories, and really not just share, but embrace those stories. So, thank you. Thank you.
I've been around a long time, and I look at all of this. We seem to be going backwards. And I'm wondering how. I know it won't happen in my lifetime, but how? How is this going? How can this even be started? There is no one out there who is saying, look, we're going back. We're going backwards. We're not going forward. And how can this be changed? Because I've said, well, it's going to be up to the young people to recognize where we were and where we are. We're no further forward. We're backwards, and how can this be changed? Somebody's got to come out and speak up and start moving and look at it and say, hey, we were there yesterday. We don't want to be there today. Let's try to move. How can this be done? How can we start this?
Well, I mean, a big part is the young people here. You know, I mean, like I said, it's about the energy. Even in the work that I do, a lot of times the young people get it. It's a lot of times the older ones that get scared, and you know, but the young people are a lot more bold and brave. But they also need guidance, you know, and the reminder again that these things that we think are new are not. And you know, and I totally agree, and that's why I will always keep supporting and nurturing our young people, because, you know, we need you all. And like you saw the drawings from my son. When we got our president, my son was very upset. He was, you know, as many other young people. And I was like, okay, get it out of your system. And then get back to what, you know, you're an artist. You know, I can have the vision in my mind, but you can actually make the vision visible. You know, and where is it? Let's go back to. So in this drawing, let me go back. Sorry. Yes, this is what he drew. Because he feels very strongly about that girls need different role models. You know, he's into the superhero business. He's like, you know, girls that need different role models, different shapes and sizes and colors. So this is one of his things. I said, that's wonderful. You have the gift. We need, you know, so we need our young people to support him. You know, this is the vision that we need. This is what he wants that is available for girls, right? And like the leader, you know, she's also an amputee, you know, because he wants, you know, disabled children need to, you know, they need to be present. So that's where it starts. You know, the energy and the vision, and it's there, but we need to support these young people to do this, because I can't do this. But, you know, so it's there. Yeah. Yes.
So you're talking about supporting young people and vision and everything. What advice or words of encouragement do you have to young people, specifically on this campus, that don't feel supported by that faculty administration when they're trying to carry out these things?
Well, find the ones that will support you. And also, and those that will support you don't always look like you. You know, you have to be open. You know, some of the people, the biggest influence did not look like me at all. So if I just limit myself to the people who look like Moose, you try to connect with those who really care about you. And so you find you supporting your fellow students, and then you also find that there are some faculty that will help you, that will support you, but sometimes you have to ask them, you know? Yeah, I think it starts there. And you also have to understand, again, this stuff is complicated, and because there is, and I just don't want to just talk about the negative. So sometimes you want to be an ally and you show up, and it's like, well, we don't want you here, right? That happens too. You're like, well, you know, and then it's like, because people have their pain, and so we have about safe spaces, and it's like, okay, I'll be back tomorrow. When you are ready, let me know when you are ready. You know, when I have my LGBT family, there's times that they just need to be, you know, and it's like, call me when you're ready, when I can join in. I have no problem with that when they get, you know, because sometimes they need to discuss things that they know what it feels like, and they don't have to explain to me, and I don't have to be privy to that. But when it's time and I can support you, I'm right there. And I have to be okay with that. Right? When my friend that I started the stories with, when all this legislature started happening here against with transgender people and turning back the clock, you know, I was via Facebook, is like, yeah, I feel so bad, I'm so far away, what can I do? You know, I feel like there's nothing I can do. And he shared with me, he said, well, for right now, we have decided we need to get together with just the transgender people and just kind of process what this is doing to us. And he said, and you will not believe there are people, you know, who are mad at us for doing that. We're saying like, look, we walk with, you know, Black Lives Matter, we participate in this, how come we can't join? Because we want to fight with you. And so just the fact that you want to say, let me breathe, let me just retreat with my group for just a second, and then we'll get, the fact that that is not allowed, right? That's a problem. And so that's why it's like, you have to be really sensitive. And again, because people are in pain, sometimes they might react to you because you are close. And they say, okay, I'm here. When you're ready, I'll be there. You know, because the thing is, I need you to do what I can't do it by myself. I need you. And I might need some time to process that, to get to that point, right? And so, because we do need everybody. But sometimes you want to get with your group of men, you want to get with you, that's fine. When you're ready, come on, let's join all of us. I mean, that's how I see it. Not everybody feels that way, but I feel very strongly about that. Yes. Mm-hmm. 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 They have to be a little bit brave. That's right. Because, okay. And those fears will come from somewhere. Let's try to see what will happen. They're not going to bite. You'll be all right, you know. That's where you have to and do it anyway. That's you know, and so sometimes we have to lead by example. Sometimes it's not about what you say, but it's about what you do. Well, you might not go, but I'll see you later. I'm going to hang out there. And guess what? I lived. I mean, it's, you know, what people are going to do? What do you expect is going to happen to me? Right? So people are where they are. People are where they are, and you cannot fix it. But, you know, if you are strong and you demonstrate that, that's an inspiration to somebody else. Well, you know, I wasn't able to go this time, but, you know, I've seen you, and so then I will follow you. And sometimes that's the best that you can offer. You know, it's not about what you say, but it's about what you do, and you lead by example. You know, and so part of redefining is also about creating a new normal. Well, of course I'm going to go in there. You know, why not? And just let it be. It's not a big deal. Yeah, you may be scared, but to me this is normal. And this is how I choose my new normal. And you know, and because to me that's part of redefining also. We have to redefine a new normal. Yes, yes. Yes.
How do I get back? Okay. All right. I'm just thinking, I mean, everybody, every human being has fears and hurts. And, you know, if you took a poll of, you know, who has, you know, been abused in some way, shape, or form, or neglected, or family trauma, or all of those things, that would probably be the vast majority of people. To me, it seems like the biggest, and maybe I'm saying it wrong, but the biggest work ultimately, if we're going to survive as a country, as a people, as a species, is healing.
Yes.
I think that is our number one priority if we're going to make it or prosper in any way, shape, or form, because it's not about money.
Right.
I think, and I don't know because I don't have lots of money and, you know, inordinate amounts of power compared to other folks, but you know, so like, what is racism doing to the white folks who are benefiting from it? You know, what is it doing to them emotionally, and how is it undercutting? I mean, if you're so into power and this and that, can you really experience love? Can you trust? Can you be trusted? You know, it's two, well, there's maybe more than two sides of the coin, but it's destroying everybody.
That's right.
And I think the healing is where we need to be going.
That's right. And so it's a great, you know, distraction, all this stuff. You know, it's a great distraction as opposed to who we are as human beings, and making that human connection and to getting that healing. But there's all this kind of stuff to being, that is a distraction. So yeah, I totally agree. And that's the work. Yeah. Shall we go drink something? Thank you. Thank you.